Well, hello and welcome to our leadership interview series. I'm Warren Howard, and at Howardco, we help our clients build sustainable, high-performing organizations that attract and retain the best people. Now, today, I'm going to reflect on leadership and particularly with a focus on emerging leaders. In the past, I've asked our guests about their advice and tips for people who are new to a leadership role. Well, today, we're going to be talking to someone who is, in fact, an emerging leader, and they are well placed to give us their insight into what it's like to being a senior leader for the first time. Now, the business environment we've all been experiencing in the last 18 months has been challenging, even for the most experienced senior leaders amongst us, because the things we've had to work with and deal with have been unprecedented. But what if you're a new leader and you don't have those years of experience behind you? Is approaching things with a fresh set of eyes an advantage, since so much of what we're going through we really haven't been through before? So today's guest is someone who I've known for over 5 years, and I've had the pleasure in seeing her evolve and grow in both ability and responsibility into her role today as the Managing Director of Milkbar Digital. So I'm so looking forward to our discussion, and I've great pleasure in welcoming Katina Rosker to our interview today. Hi Katina, how are you?
Good, thank you. I'm really looking forward to our chat today.
Well, me as well, Katina. As I said, I've known you for over 5 years now. It's been such a thrill to be working with you and the team at Milkbar Digital. And so I'm really, really looking forward to having this interview and this conversation where we can share what you've learned and some of your thoughts about being a new leader in your role. So let's ask you just a brief overview of your career and your background to Milkbar and what brings you to where you are today.
So I've been at Milkbar Digital for just over 5 years now. When I first joined Milkbar, it was quite a small team. So there was Sam, who's our founder and director, and two other people 2 days a week. I joined the team and started off part-time as well, and I was a social media coordinator. So I essentially helped out some clients with whatever they really needed across their social media channels. And sort of over the years, that role developed into being a social media manager, and I started looking after my own team, which was very nerve-wracking, but also very exciting. So that was my first time managing. I was in that position for about 2 years, and then probably just over a year ago, I started the very exciting role of managing director at Milkbar. So a bit of a transition and a shift for me. So no longer taking care of my own clients, which I had been doing for 4 years, so a big change. And I'm mainly taking care of an immediate team, the team as a whole, new business development, a lot of strategy work, and basically whatever anyone else needs a hand with. So it's a very varied role. No 2 days look the same. And I guess prior to Milkbar, I had a small contract role at another social media agency for a few months. And pretty much before then, it was all just uni and internships. So I had a lot of internships in my final couple of years at uni. And that's when I really discovered the world of social media. And that's, yeah, when I realized that's where I wanted to head.
Well, thanks, Katina. Now, let me ask a couple of quick questions there based on all of that wonderful information.
Hmm.
When you started, you said what, there was 3 or 4 in the team?
Yes, yeah.
Yep. How many today? How many people?
Officially, as of today, we had a new starter, officially 21.
Wow.
Yes.
So from 4 to 21
Mhm.
in over what period of time?
Yeah, about 5 years.
About 5 years. So that's pretty rapid growth, isn't it? So it's a great time to be on board. And of course, that growth has mirrored the explosion in social media over the time.
Absolutely.
That
Yeah.
has really, really grown.
Yeah. When I was at uni, it wasn't a part of the curricula. Like it just didn't exist really. I think I had one unit at uni that was for digital marketing, but they never even touched on this. So I'm sure it's very different these days.
Well, that really is very, very different. And I imagine back then, would it have been Facebook, the only sort of social media platform that people were talking about?
Yeah, pretty much. I think Instagram was still new when it came to businesses
Yep.
being on there. I think it was there for your personal use, but it's, yeah, definitely really taken off now.
Wonderful. Well, the exciting time to be on board. And obviously, you must be doing a good job because you don't get to 21 people unless people like what you're doing, and there's more demand for your services. So fantastic. I know there's a lot more story behind all of that, and I'm sure we're going to dig a bit deeper as we go into the next questions. But let's reflect on your experience, particularly over the last 18 months, because they have been challenging times. What 3 words would you use to describe your own personal experience as a leader
Yeah.
during the last 18 months?
I think the first would be ever changing.
Mm.
I think, yeah, no 2 days are really the same. You didn't know it was around the corner. And I think because of that as well, it was a little bit scary, the unknown. Yeah, just not knowing where things would head, what's next week going to even look like. But I think overall as well, it's also been a very rewarding year. I think it's been particularly a big year of growth for Milkbar. And I think we've been one of the lucky businesses during COVID. So yeah, I think I'd probably pick scary, ever changing, and rewarding.
How have you grown as a person, Katina, as apart from the responsibilities of the role,
Hmm.
what have you learned about yourself in that time?
If I was looking back at myself 18 months ago, I probably would have been very scared, like I mentioned, just not really knowing like what was ahead. I'm a lot more resilient than I probably thought. Able to think on my feet a lot more than I thought I could too. I'm someone who's very process and yeah, anything to do with systems and whatever can be organized is sort of my default way of thinking. So that's been a bit of a challenge, but I think I've learnt that I can do whatever's needed on the fly, even though it might be a bit hard sometimes. And I think that's probably like a big part of yeah my growth in the last year is having to adapt to that kind of mindset and that way of working. Yeah.
Great answer, Katina. Resilience is certainly something that we've all had to learn if we didn't have it already. And the other thing you talked about, being adaptable and agile, being able to move with the times and adjust your style, adjust the way you're going about managing. So, resilience and agility are, I think, 2 very positive outcomes of our experiences in the last 18 months. So well done. Thank you for answering that question. That was a bit of an impromptu one, but I knew you'd answer it well. Thank you. What are some of the challenges that you've experienced in your new role, particularly something perhaps you weren't expecting?
There's kind of 2 that come to mind. One of them is probably just the best way to make decisions. And I think that was a big part of what I was concerned about, I guess, stepping into this new role. Like, how do I make the right decision? How do I make sure it's right for everyone involved? How do I make sure I'm not taking too long? Because obviously some decisions have to be made quite quickly. And I knew that going into it. But then when you're kind of in it for real and you have a lot of things going on at the same time, it can be a tough one. So I think, yeah, making decisions and, it's different when you're working on your own clients and things that you're across every single day because you've got all the information. But whereas with a team member, they might come to you and you might have to make a decision, but you might not have all the facts and you might have to spend a bit of time looking into it and trying to figure out what's the best thing for the team member, Milkbar as a whole, or for the client. So that's been a bit of a challenge to try to navigate. And I think with decision making too, everything is always new. So you can't really default on a past process that you might have had in place because there's no such thing as the same problem kind of twice. So that's been a bit of a challenge. And then I'd say the other one is probably time management. I think that's a big one because when you're in a leadership role, you of course have your own responsibilities and things that you have to tick off. And, you might go into tomorrow thinking, I've got the whole day to literally do admin and I can, have no meetings. It's looking like a lot of desk time. It looks great. And then all of a sudden you get in and there's a lot of things that suddenly need your attention. And you have to kind of really shift your mindset and move things around because you obviously don't want to be a bottleneck and hold things up for people. But then if you're moving your things to the other side, it's like, when are you going to have time for that? So that's been definitely a bit of a challenge trying to, move things around and try to find time for my own things versus whatever the team needs. So that's been, a bit of an interesting one as well.
Thanks, Katina. I'm sure many people will relate to exactly what you were talking about there. First of all, the ever-changing nature of making decisions. No 2 decisions are the same. But the other thing is about the constant demands on your time.
Yeah.
And having to set priorities, and with all those competing interests, whether it be customers, other stakeholders, your team, the business owner, there's a lot of juggling has to go on in a day to actually get the important things done, and making sure that you're doing the important, not just the urgent ones as well.
Yeah.
Okay, some really great insights. Thank you. What about the flip side of this? What have been the rewards of being a new managing director?
There's been heaps. So it's been, yeah, I think a lot of the time when you can reflect, you might think about the challenges and that sort of thing. But I feel like I've been able to have a look at a lot of the positives and a lot of the rewards. And I think, particularly for me, a lot comes down to where Milkbar first started and where I was in my journey and where Milkbar was 5 years ago. So I guess to see Milkbar where it is now, it's really nice knowing I've played a bit of a part in that, and I feel like a piece of the furniture, really. So, yeah, for me, a lot of the rewards are based off, I guess, training new team members, seeing where they end up, whether that's progression for them internally at Milkbar, or it's seeing them move on to somewhere amazing and them being able to bring all the skills and things that I've personally helped train them with, and I find that that's been great. Um, and I think that some other advantages or other rewards this year has again just been the growth, but particularly in terms of the project side of our business. So we've started doing a lot of project work, which never really was a thing for us a few years ago, and it's really great to see that happen. And I think a big one too, moving into this role, I never expected it, I guess, this early on in my career. I never thought that this would be where I'd be 5 years down the track. So I think a massive reward of it is really how much Sam, the founder of Milkbar, also trusts me to be in this role. So that in itself is probably one of the biggest rewards, I'd say.
And Sam, I'm sure, would agree with all of that. And I know Sam very well also.
Mhm.
So, look, what you said there is really interesting. It made me think about the nature of your industry. As we said, it's quite a young industry, and therefore it's an industry for younger people. It's definitely a younger generation industry. And for Milkbar, it's been for some of your, and probably many of your team, a starting point for their
Yes.
career, which is just terrific. And it was really nice to hear how you look at that role that you play in developing up people, and even if they end up leaving, that you've added to their career development and their future. And I think we know that people are looking for jobs. They want a good place to work, somewhere with a purpose, where they can make a contribution. But people do want to grow. They want to develop their skills at the same time. We're obviously doing that well. Well done. Next question. Can you tell us about your own approach to leadership now as you have developed it? And also, who or what has inspired you in your career,
Mm.
particularly perhaps in some of the more challenging times when you may have even doubted yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in terms of my overall leadership approach, I think I'm quite collaborative and I like to think nurturing as well. I kind of see myself as someone who loves really working closely with the team. So whether that's my direct team or anyone at Milkbar, I love the training aspect. I love really helping people upskill, helping people problem solve. I love being in that team environment as well. And then I think whenever I do have to make those decisions, whenever possible, I love really being able to consult with other people to try to get a few opinions and feel like I'm really covering all bases, really. I think I'm also, a bit nurturing in the way where I like to kind of like think the best of people. And, if someone might skip out on something, it's not necessarily like a finger wagging moment or anything like that, but it's like, oh, like, is there something I actually could have done to help support them? Like, what's that next little bit of training that I need to do to make sure like this doesn't happen again? But then I'm also quite process driven, like I mentioned. So sometimes like that's in the mix a little bit too. I guess in terms of who or what has inspired me, definitely Sam. I think from day one being at Milkbar, I've always found the way that Sam leads and manages, I've always found that really inspiring. She's struck the balance of being someone that you can have a great relationship with at work, but also feel a really good personal connection with. And I feel like that's always been a management style that I've wanted to pick up myself. I think that you can still have a successful business and a team that respects you and works towards goals, but you don't always have to necessarily be someone who's very strict or that type of thing. So I think that's something I always try to remember in my own style. And obviously there's times to be a bit more assertive. But overall, yeah, I feel like Sam's really inspired me, and that's definitely impacted how I like to manage or lead. And in terms of, yeah, what's inspired me during challenging times or what's helped when I've doubted myself, I guess just talking to others, getting, some reassurance you're doing the right thing, or little bits of feedback even from the team. And it could even just be like really small things that people mention, and it kind of just gives you a little like, oh, like, okay, a bit of a tap on the back. I know I'm doing all right. And I think, yeah, it's like every day is a new day, a day to try something new. And yeah, I think especially in the last year, it's like a lot of the time has been challenging, not even just because of the pandemic and everything, but moving into this new role. So I think it was almost just a case of needing a few months to really find my feet, and everything like that as well.
Mm. Thanks, Katina. You know that I mean, everyone is inspired by somebody or some
Mm,
event in their life, and we learn things both positive and negative, don't we,
mhm,
from people we've worked with and situations we've had to face. And look, it's really, it's really lovely to hear what you've gained from working with Sam Sydney as well. I agree with all of that.
mhm,
But here's the interesting thing: while you've been watching and observing Sam, others have been watching and observing you.
mm,
So, as you said, being a leader is also being that inspiration for others. And I
mhm,
really liked what you said about your coaching role.
mm,
Leader as coach is a really, really important attribute for leaders of today.
mhm.
And everyone's a leader. Everyone has the potential to be a leader, and everyone has the potential to influence and help others grow. Here's the last question. Well, no, it's actually the second last. Sorry. If you hadn't chosen this career, you said before you're not sure what you would have been doing, but what do you think you might have been doing right now if you hadn't got into social media?
I feel like if you asked me 5 years ago, like before I started at Milkbar, I probably would have had a much different answer to now.
Mm.
I think before this job, I probably would have, I don't know, I might have even wanted to go into like graphic design or maybe a different part of digital marketing. I think things like SEO and that kind of thing always kind of tickled my fancy as well. But yeah, now that I'm here and I've obviously like learned everything, I feel like a really interesting part that I've learned about myself is how much I love to manage, or how much I love to organize, or yeah, take care of processes. So I don't know what that would look like, but I think, yeah, if I had these skills 5 years ago, I think I could potentially have gone down a different path. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't know, but it's interesting because my whole job now, the part that I probably enjoy the most is the management, and yeah, like the leadership sort of aspect. But the process is always there, so I'm like, what can you give me, and what can I organize?
I think that's a really, really good thing to reflect on for many people these days, because sometimes it's difficult to try and project forward what your career might look like,
Mm,
or even what job you might be doing, given that jobs seem to be changing so rapidly.
yeah.
So what's more important, isn't it, is to actually think about, well, what are the things I'm good at? What do I like doing? And how can I apply those in my career? Because that way you open up a lot more options to yourself for your self growth. So
Mm.
really good, really, really good sound information and advice there. All right, here's the last one. This is really the last one. Okay. Knowing what you know now,
Mm.
what advice would you give to your younger self about how to approach your career?
I feel like for me personally, it's interesting because, and we sort of touched on it, it's like I didn't think a place like this existed when I was studying. So it's not something that I could have dreamt of, if that makes sense, because it wasn't there. I've always been a really big advocate of internships. Like I know that's a thing that I will always pass on and talk to people about. I think I'd definitely pass that advice on to my younger self again. It kind of connects with the idea of just wanting to be a sponge and soaking up as much as you can. So from anyone at uni that you feel like is, doing a great job, people at an internship, a tutor, managers, anyone. And it could even be like pulling out tips and tricks from jobs that aren't actually like related to what you want to actually do. But you might have a retail job that you did when you were in high school, but you can still pull out some skills or pull out some key learnings from different situations. So I think just being a sponge as much as possible is probably something. I think a part of the internship thing as well is just trying things out, because when you're in uni, you might have an ideal career in mind, and you might have an internship and realize, hey, this isn't actually anything that tickles my fancy. I don't actually think I want a career here. Let me try something else instead at another internship.
Yeah.
And I think internships themselves too can just open a lot of doors, whether that is a potential job offer or just a connection that you can have, and that kind of thing too. I think probably another thing for me that I probably would tell myself, because I know especially years ago I was a lot more strictly like process or like goal driven, and I think that while that's great, it's not always practical. So I think just reminding myself that it's okay to go with the flow or trust your gut, live in the moment sometimes, because yeah, it doesn't really matter as long as you're putting like your best foot forward. You're probably going to keep learning and get to the spot that you want to anyway.
Excellent. Wise words. Very wise words. There's a little piece of the jigsaw here that I thought we possibly should add back in, just for people who are listening who don't possibly know the full scenario here, because we've
Mm,
mentioned Sam, the
yes.
founder of the business.
Mhm.
We know you're now the managing director.
Yes.
But probably what we haven't really covered off on is what were the circumstances that led Sam Sydney to hand over responsibility for running the business to Katina Rosker.
Yes, that is true.
Let's explain that.
Well, I guess like to even backpedal a bit from there, when I joined Milkbar, I always sort of knew that it was somewhere special. It was something that I felt really hungry for, I guess, from day one. And I kind of knew early on, I was like, wow, I was like, Milkbar's going somewhere. It's so exciting. And from, I think even like 6 months in, I was already saying to Sam, like, oh, like I'd love to put my hand up. Like, I really want to help. Like, what can I do? How can I help? And I wasn't even thinking about a next step or anything like that. I was literally just like, Sam's doing everything. I was like, what can I do?
That's right.
So I think that's kind of been my attitude since day one. And I think that's probably helped my progression to this point. I guess the real transition into this exact role was I was that social media manager for a couple of years. And I feel, more recently to getting this new position, I started helping out with some other things around the business. So whether that was new business development, so putting together pitches and talking to potential clients and all that fun stuff, I started doing a lot more of that. And in my previous performance review, I remember Sam saying something like, oh, in the future, can you imagine yourself in, a kind of role where you're taking care of like no clients and you may be helping me out with more of the business side of things. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. Maybe in the next like 3 to 4 years or something like that. And then fast forward, turns out Sam's going to be going on maternity leave. So that was all basically incredibly fast forwarded, a lot earlier than I think we both anticipated. So yeah, it was basically a chat of, hey, do you want to try this new role out? And I said yes. So here we are. So yeah, it was definitely a challenging transition as well. Obviously, Sam getting ready to go on maternity leave as well. So it made handover not as straightforward, or I guess as process driven as we probably both wanted. Yeah, so that probably made it a little bit more challenging, but also exciting as well.
Thanks, Katina. I really wanted to sort of join the dots there for everyone because that's what
Yeah.
we know, but it's not obvious to everyone. But Katina, can I just say thank you very much? I've really enjoyed listening to your insights and your learnings from your career, your wonderful career so far. It's been an honour to have been part of that
Mm,
as a coach to yourself and to the business, and to see the growth that you've all experienced. Indeed,
yeah.
for me, it's very, very rewarding and satisfying. I've learned a lot from you as well. And And I would hope that anyone who's listening to this has also, really taking something on board, whether you are that person who is new into a leadership role and now hearing it from someone else's perspective, or perhaps like Sam was, or like Katina was earlier in her career, someone who aspired to this role but was looking for the opportunity.
Mm.
There's been a lot in this conversation for everyone. There's also something in it for business owners as well, for you to reflect on what would happen if you wanted to step out of the business, needed to, wanted to.
Mm.
Who would run the business for you? And do you have someone in the pipeline who you're developing and growing to be able to do that?
Mm.
Because succession planning is such an important role for any business owner to think about who would run the business if I didn't want to or couldn't. And maybe a bigger question, could they do it better? I'll leave you with that thought. Katina, thanks so much. You've been a delight as always. Fantastic answers. I'm sure people are going to get a lot out of this interview. I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Oh, I did. Thank you so much, Warren. It's been great. And thank you for all of your help over the years too. I definitely wouldn't be here with all this wisdom and with all these ideas if not for your help as well.
That's wonderful, Katina. Thanks so much. See you soon.
Thanks.